Hello, in this video, I would like to talk about who I think will master English language faster, Alejandro or Dini. Most of you said that Dini will acquire the English language faster than Alejandro, and I agree with your response. In making a decision on who will acquire the language faster than the other, we have to look at multiple factors. As we covered in our last session, factors that we are going to look at is age, affective factors like anxiety, motivation, self-esteem, cognitive development in first and second language, language development in first and second language, and academic development in first and second language, social cultural environment, opportunities to use second language, and finally, access to native speakers of English. Okay, so let's start with age. So Dini is 11 years old and Alejandro is 20 years old. Dini is a lot younger than Alejandro. So as we studied in class, if before you reach to puberty, you have ability to acquire language subconsciously. Adults can also acquire second language, but it requires more conscious, systematic effort. And then when it comes to pronunciation, younger people have a lot more advantage than adults. So Dini has more advantage than Alejandro on that regard. Affective factors is another factor that influenced language acquisition. So Dini seems to be in more welcoming environment compared to Alejandro. She lives with a family who adopted her, and then she attends school with her brother, right? And on the other hand, Alejandro, who immigrated from Guatemala, works in small factory and then in Pennsylvania, and it seems like the community does not really welcome new immigrants. So he feels that the immigrants, including himself, are discriminated in the community. That is a negative factor that impede sound second language acquisition. Cognitive development in first language and second language is another factor. On that aspect, I think Alejandro has an advantage over Dini because those who develop fully cognitively using their first language has more advantage in adding more, skills cognitively, whether it is first language or second language. Even though Dini developed cognitively to a certain extent before she immigrated to the US when she was 7, her cognitive development in first language was interrupted a little bit. It is good that she is meeting with her tutor who speaks her first language occasionally. I think it's a once a week. So that is a plus because she gets to talk to her tutor in her first language, and then through that interaction, she can continue pick up her cognitive development in her first language. But I guess the level or amount of input she gets from 1 hour tutoring once a week is not the same as the level of input that you get if you are in school full time and learning content in the first language full time. So with regards to cognitive development, Alejandro has an advantage. The language development in first and second language, I think, is also very similar to what I just talked about in relation to cognitive development. So one needs to develop one's first language fully, um, in order to develop second language fully. It's like first language is your foundation, and then you add second language on top of your first language. It is rare for someone to develop their second language even more at the advanced level than one's first language. It is ideal to develop first language, have a very solid foundation in first language, or um, do a bilingual, multilingual education, and then continue to develop first language while you acquire the second language, right? So Alejandro has very strong foundation in his first language, while Dini um, hasn't really developed fully in her first language when she came to the United States. Again, she does have some support from her tutor, so it's not like her first language development is completely interrupted, but it's not the same as if she was in her native country. Academic development is also like similar to previous factors. So you can bring in some skills and knowledge that you acquired in first language to the second language. So on that regard, Alejandro seems to have an advantage over Dini because he was educated in Guatemala and he was a very good student. So he can transfer, what he learned in Guatemala, his schools in Guatemala, in academic settings in the U.S. Dini, on the other hand, didn't really have a schooling experience in Indonesia, so she has to learn all these academic skills in English. Again, she has a tutor, so she is getting some support in Indonesian to develop some academic languages in first language too. Social cultural environment. I think I really actually mentioned this earlier when I talked about affective factors, and I think these affective factors and then social cultural environment are related. So, as I mentioned earlier, the community that Alejandro lives in is hostile to immigrants. So he feels more nervous. He doesn't feel he's welcome, right? And if he's not welcomed, he probably has less motivation to talk to other people, native speakers of English in his community. So he has less contact with native speakers and he gets less input, which is necessary for him to develop second language. Dini, on the other hand, is living with American family and then speaking English to them all the time at home in a welcoming, warm environment. Opportunity to use second language. I think I already mentioned this. Alejandro works in a factory and he talks to his colleagues mostly in Spanish. And because of the environment, in a hostile environment in the community, he doesn't have a lot of opportunity to talk to native speakers of English. Dini, on the other hand, is speaking English to her family and friends all the time. So she has more input. Okay, the last one, I think I already mentioned this. Access to native speakers of English is crucial for second language development. I mean, English as a second language development. Alejandro doesn't have this very much, while Dini has this access to native speakers. So I think overall, Dini is in better environment to develop her English as a second language faster than Alejandro.